afternoon, good evening.
But yeah, welcome everyone. I'm Micah, good to see you, I'm Eric, and today we're talking Hercules.
That's right. Today is Hercules, and I'm going to keep a browser open so that we can pop over and check in with actual Greek mythology here and there once
Okay,
in a
nice.
while. But
Micah's you're always on top of the research game for this. I'm always just kind of winging it, but you always have what's the book or what's the source material here. So there's a lot of source material on this one.
There's a lot of source material on this one, and we talked about how Disney will take some license with sanitizing, tweaking some elements here and there, sometimes pushing it more into a hero's journey structure, for the modern Western audience and stuff. And they really do it with the source material here. But I would argue, I don't know, what are you coming into this with as far as positionality, or if you're going to phrase your takeaways, what's sort of your thesis here? Yeah.
I don't know. This one, I rewatched it last weekend, and it's kind of mid-level for me. It's not my favorite Disney. There's a bunch of really cool parts in it, but it feels very kind of up and down. I mean, as far as the themes of it go, it's got this very Western classic, hero's journey, Christian feel to it. It's all gospel music throughout. And then in the setting of Greek gods, Olympus, all that.
I remember my grandmother was an educator, and it came from a long line of university educated women way before that was remotely common, or actually now the majority. And so I remember her, but her accent and everything was super oaky. She was from a tiny town of Oklahoma in Osage County, and so you would not guess it that she was this super insightful wit and intelligence, and but she was awesome. Anyway, one of her things is it used to drive her crazy that they called Greek mythology, and that that it was taught and studied as mythology, which is how we understand it. Yeah. But that's because we weren't around then. And her whole point was this was religion. This was worldview. This was the Greek pantheon was how the world was made and how the metaphysical realm operated. And you made real expensive pilgrimages and sacrifices to this pantheon. It was gospel, it was religion. And so I love that when they made Hercules, they made it, all the music's got gospel music.
Yeah.
It's the chorus, which is a Greek, invention, is a gospel chorus. And it's a choir, like a gospel choir, and they treat it we're gonna it's Sunday, it's church. And Sunday service is Hercules, and then they also definitely took the Greek pantheon, which is very morally gray, across the board.
Sure.
There are no benevolent gods in Greek mythology.
Yeah. Right.
But then there also aren't any truly evil ones. Hades is not.
He's Lucifer. Just the Lord of the Underworld. He's not a bad guy. That's just his domain, right?
Yeah. In fact, frankly, he kind of does the least amount of fuckery with the mortal world.
Right.
Because he's I just mess with dead people.
I just once you die, then that's where I come in. Otherwise, you guys, land of the living is not my jam.
And he'll mess with the world of the living, and he'll make deals. That's one thing I love that they rolled into this movie, is him making deals. But Zeus is not God the Father, He's
right.
The guy's got zero moral principles.
Oh, you definitely have a God the Father and Satan thing happening with Zeus and Hades in the Disney one.
They definitely took it and brought the I don't want to say Western, because Greek is Western.
Sure, exactly.
but the Judeo part of the
Yeah, yeah,
Judeo-Christian cultural framework, they really like laid in there. So you've got, Zeus, his benevolent father.
yeah.
He's actually like wed to the woman that is supposedly the mother
Yeah,
of Hercules, which is
right.
not the way it goes in
That's
the
not how
original
that went
story.
down. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. But anyway, all of that is interesting to just sort of frame Hercules and how they adapted it.
yeah.
But like we're here to talk about the movie. They took it, they made it very Judeo-Christian, and like and then I would argue Hercules is almost just across the board a Christ story
Sure.
in terms of the way the plot points kind of come out, except that Hercules is found
Hercules in the Disney story is
in the Disney
the
story.
Christ.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And Hercules is actually the Roman name for him. The
Mm.
original Greek was Heracles.
Hmm.
But of course, if you called the movie Heracles, nobody would
Rolls
know
off
what
the
it
tongue
is.
better to our American
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Hercules,
vernacular.
and then um, uh, I think structurally this movie obviously it's the hero's journey, but it's really like a dual protagonist movie. I would argue similarly to Aladdin,
Okay.
similarly to Tangled.
Okay.
The movie really is Hercules and Meg. Like they
Yeah.
both go through like uh, character arcs. They're both necessary for the progress of the plot.
That's their romance story too, because like all the good romance stories are each character, and then they find each other at the end.
So Megara is in the original story. She is the first wife of Heracles. Their story that they give her is not from the original tale.
Okay.
But like Heracles like murders their son in like a temporary fit of madness, right? So
Like
that's not in the sequel.
if we get into how much of the original Greek they threw out in the Disney, that's going to be the whole podcast.
Yeah, well, suffice it to say, it wouldn't have been rated G, and
Wouldn't have been
like
in theaters.
there's a good chance. And anyway, this movie, like, what I don't know, what do you? It's sort of middling for you.
So, okay, the one theme I got is there's this very up and down feel towards Hercules' story. He's in Olympus and then he falls and then he's nothing, right? And then he meets Zeus and he's kind of he's back up again and then he's constantly like, getting knocked down and getting built back up. Um, and it keeps going back and forth. He's up, he's down, he's happy, he's sad, like, and it's like he goes into it for a period of time. I didn't feel like there was much of a build up or kind of let down around that. So I think the story felt kind of um like you're getting jerked around a lot with that. It
Hmm.
wouldn't feel quite as like a smooth flow of that for me. Um and I don't know, it's also like it wasn't one that like I didn't watch this one a ton growing up. My kids love it. And so like they like the songs, they think Hercules is a cool character, but there's also not like hey, I remember watching this nostalgia factor for me. So it's good. The song's really good. The Hercules main tune is I think one of the better Disney songs in the canon. But yeah, I don't know, that's my take.
Yeah,
What about you?
it scratches a lot of itches for me, and it came out when I was around 17, 16 or 17, and so I was dating, uh, like Hercules. If we're gonna go into sort of the Christian vernacular, like Hercules is a little bit of a missionary dater. Like, he kind of
Mm.
simps for Meg, and she's
Right.
like the OnlyFans like girl that he's gonna like rescue, like
Okay.
she's in this, she's morally compromised, right? She's like, um,
Yeah.
she's like a pawn of Satan, and but like she's,
Yeah.
it's almost like the Western trope of like, the prostitute with the heart of gold, and like,
Right. Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
and so
And
I'll
Hercules is
say,
kind of that like, in Dungeons and Dragons term, he's lawful good. He's the like
Hmm.
she calls him Golden Boy the whole time, right? He's
Yeah, and
like,
he's a Boy
and he
Scout, and
kind of yeah, Boy Scout, kind of naive to the dark side of this, and Meg's the more like worldly one who kind of
yeah,
knows the ins and outs of the underworld and the
right.
chaotic nature of
And
things,
she's been
and
burned.
yeah,
She's she's cynical. And it's worth mentioning. So we've got like the Roman Greco like thing. You've got the gospel mixed in, and then there's strong Superman vibes through the whole thing.
okay,
Like
yeah, yeah,
like he's Clark Kent. He's Kal-El. He falls down. He gets found
hmm,
by this little farmer couple in like the
yeah,
Greek version of Kansas,
yeah,
and grows up weird. And they
yeah,
reveal his birthright to him, and he like goes to see his father. It's just like just put it in the North Pole with Marlon Brando, and like boom, it's Superman. And
yeah,
and
okay,
he's like, here's what you need to know to go be a hero. And then he's got to go be a hero. And then
yeah,
he's like, but he has that thing where he kind of wants to be like everyone else, which
yeah,
is Superman 2. And sooner or later, these will be the dad movies that we go back and review. And Superman
right,
2
right.
is just a nightmare. Like, it was so cool when I was a kid, and you watch it now, it's just a mess. But the awesome thing about it is that he's like, I just want to be a human like everyone else. So they kind of shoehorn that in. Like, it's present in Hercules, but it's not like prevalent the
Yeah,
way Superman 2 was really all about that. Like, in order for him to have a lasting romance with Lois Lane, it was worth giving up his immortality to go and be with
yeah,
her. And then
yeah.
he sort of figures out he can do both. So that's present in this movie, but like it came out at a time for me. Like I watched the heck out of it. I loved the
Interesting.
music. There are not a whole lot of Disney movies where, and maybe I'm going to eat these words later, but off the top of my head, I'm thinking like of all the big ticket Disney movies, not a ton of them have got guys that are at the front of it. Like usually the face on the poster is the princess. At least at the time,
Yeah,
it was
I'm
like,
trying to think. Are you talking about the advertising specifically, or the
yeah,
like
and just the
the
big
like the main
titles. Like
protagonists of each one? Yeah,
at the time, you had Little Mermaid, Beauty and the
yeah.
Beast.
You had
Um,
Aladdin.
yeah, you did have Aladdin, but that's another one. Aladdin and Jasmine. They're like
Right. Yeah, yeah.
a lot more people are dressing up as Jasmine than dressing up as Aladdin. Not that like anyone dresses up as
Aladdin doesn't
Hercules,
lend
but
itself well to a good costume though. Baggy pants
that's
and the
true.
blue,
Yeah, you
the
got to have
purple vest.
abs.
But yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah,
Which is rough because no one in America has abs. No one in the world,
yeah.
no one in the Western world has abs.
Not like
Uh,
Aladdin.
but it was like, oh, this is great, and it had like, it came strong with the hero's journey, so it was really appealing. And then like it totally affected the way I dated.
Yeah.
100% like would draw parallels. It's like,
Did you
oh,
turn
I
into
need
Golden Boy? I want to be lawful good dater.
yeah, I need to be like Hercules, and if you're like Hercules, then you like kind of
Okay.
rescue Megaras, right? All the way down to like
Yeah, yeah.
the girl that
Oh, the knight
I
in shiny
applied
armor,
this to was
Micah.
Meg, and like um, and uh, and so it didn't work out. Well, let's just say like
Okay.
this is a great movie. I'm not sure that it's the best romantic advice, um,
You want
but
to psychoanalyze your relationship history here and go
yeah,
on
I
that
think
tangent?
maybe it's
Okay.
time to like
Give
really
you a little therapy.
yeah, flex the degrees up there on the wall there. Let's go. But yeah, what do you think about that as a model for romance, for as a model of like,
I mean, the knight shining armor rescue the damsel in distress and fix all of her problems for her. I mean, you live that story. It doesn't go well, and then I see a lot of
yeah,
couples in therapy as a result, and because it's all a fantasy, right? You're playing a role.
yeah,
And it's not. I mean, and it works for a drama. It works for this story, and I think like as an archetype that we want to embody like being that, but then also like once you get the girl, what does the relationship look like after?
right,
There's the like if we did what does Hercules and Meg's relationship look like 3 months after this, well, they're fighting and they're hating each other, and all of a sudden Hercules thinks he's totally inadequate because Meg's still got all these issues.
Yeah, so flesh that out. So 3 months later, 6 months later, 9 months later, like what is the pathology that progresses? Like we imagine Hercules is like, well, I gave up Olympus and like what's Meg up to? Is she still like
I think 3 months in, they're still kind of trying to live this like happy couple fantasy, but the cracks are starting to build. And then, a year later, if they're even together, Hercules is totally demoralized and kind of just like, I totally passive. I got to go along with everything she says because she's going to go psycho on me, and I have no voice and no nothing else. And she's triggered by every little thing he does wrong because he's going to screw me over just like everyone else screwed me over.
yeah.
I see it being a pretty volatile relationship.
And what about the moral inequities, like where like Meg is going to continuously feel like Hercules has got something over her. Hercules is never going to be able to step in and assert himself because it will set off that sense of inequity.
I mean,
Maybe I'm
Hercules,
yeah
yeah, like, well, if he steps in to assert himself, then like it just becomes really emotionally triggering. And does he have he's too much of a good, agreeable guy to go into the conflict, to confront the issues that are there.
yeah.
Because he's always
So
trying to be the hero. So like I can't ever upset her in order to do that. And obviously we're going way beyond the story here, but like
yeah yeah.
that's
Well, but this is
yeah.
and so this is a pathology that you see playing out
Yeah.
in your practice. I'm guessing that often the sexes are reversed, where
No, 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 not necessarily. I mean, it's
okay,
actually pretty close. So if I really want to play this out in modern times, right? Does he let Meg walk all over him? He's got no voice and is kind of a porn addict on the side because that's the only way he can get his needs met or ask for what he wants without upsetting whatever else is going on there. Like, because he just wants to be the hero all the time, right? But then and then he feels demoralized because I'm constantly just upsetting this person who I can never please because she's got other issues that are unresolved, but won't look at that and blames him. Like, there's parallels there. It's not a perfect
yeah,
one-to-one analogy,
yeah,
but like,
yeah. So it's funny that these pathologies are like just lurking in some ways, and this is like
well, because
so
Hercules is kind
many
of naive in that way. I guess like
right.
going back to it, like he's got to integrate his shadow. He's
Mm,
always being the good guy, the golden boy. And that's why she's like, you
mhm,
can't really handle me. Like you don't really know
mhm.
what darkness is about. You don't really know what those issues are. And I think that can initially look moral on the surface, like he's the good one and she's the crazy one, but like
Right.
it's the, kind of Jordan Peterson talks about like there's no virtue in weakness. Like you're just
Right.
always being the good guy because you're not actually capable of aggression.
Right.
He could fight a dragon, but if there's conflict in his relationship, can he actually confront the issues that are there, or is he just
Yeah.
like scared
Yeah.
to
It's like you can fight a
address those
dragon, but you
problems?
can't stand up for yourself to your mom,
Yeah, yeah,
which
exactly.
is probably super, super common. And so it's interesting
Right.
that Hercules is physically like unbelievably, indomitably strong and
Hmm.
almost, nigh immortal,
Yeah.
but he has this sort of childish weakness to him.
He does feel
The
very
thing,
young. I guess as you're saying
yeah,
that, like he feels adolescent the whole time. I guess like by
yeah,
the end of the movie, he's kind of progressed to like late adolescence, 20, 21, but he feels like a kid
yeah,
the whole time. Like
yeah.
there's no moment in The Lion King where it's like he goes back to face Scar, and by the end, it's like he's grown up. He's taken Mufasa's place, and he is
Yeah,
fully an
yeah,
adult.
and
Like,
all like, and it fast. He ages from like 13 to 25, like in Phil's musical number, which is a great
yeah,
musical
yeah,
number, and
right,
Danny DeVito's like complete lack of singing, not ability. I don't want to say that, but singing like polish. Like there's no
yeah,
polish to his vocals,
no,
and
yeah,
but it's awesome. It works so
and
well.
it works for his character. It's so great.
Totally, yeah, it's great.
But
But
I get
he's
like okay, so Hercules, he's surrounded by like been around the block, kind of degenerate people, and he's just Mr. like wide-eyed, naive golden boy.
He's almost a catalyst protagonist if we wanted to tell the story that guileless naivete and like blunt virtue is the way forward in life. But that isn't his story.
Yeah,
He does confront liars and tricksters and duplicity and betrayal. And I do want to say, like, the thing that makes his romance with Meg work, I think, is that it isn't actually one-sided. She actually gives her life for him first.
Yeah.
And so she demonstrates, I want to say, that thing that we see in Cinderella, which is like once she commits, like she really commits. And so despite the fact that she has nothing to gain from it, she makes that sacrifice first, which is paralleled in Tangled. And I think it's sort of paralleled in Aladdin, as I think of movies that have the same structure, like Disney movies that have the same structure, where it's like the romance, the romantic parallel hero's journey. And so it isn't pure, missionary dating, which for everyone out there that hasn't been steeped in Christianese their whole lives, like missionary dating is when like the good, virtuous, boy or girl goes out and starts dating someone that doesn't go to church, isn't a believer or whatever, and like tries to save them. It almost never works.
It's not good.
Not a great plan going in. So Meg does offer herself and put her life on the line for Hercules, but Hercules, not only does he need to refine himself into the kind of warrior that can go and fight in like that form of heroism, and he develops just so far until we get to, I guess, about the midpoint when he goes to tell Zeus, like, all right, I'm rich, I'm famous, I'm an influencer, I'm on the Nikes, like, I have sponsorships, I've achieved heroism. And Zeus is like, you haven't found it yet. And he doesn't find out what it is until, one, he really, really loves somebody. And then two, he has to integrate, he actually uses Hades and Hades' tactics against Hades. And so it's an interesting aspect that is not part of, it's kind of part of the like Christ model, because there is that portion in the Christian, mythos or story, however you want to describe it for these purposes, where he encounters the devil in the wilderness and kind of outfoxes the devil at the literature game, right? Like they play like essentially they play riddles, like Bilbo and Smeagol almost, right? Like, and Jesus comes out on top because he like outfoxes the devil with his own game. And so Hercules, until he can fall in love, sacrifice himself, and he does the same thing as the Christian mythos, right? Where he descends into the realm of the dead, which is what, Jesus was up to in the 3 days where he was in the tomb, and he goes into the dead and rescues his bride from the powers of death. And so that's what happens at the end of Hercules, like, just straight up. And he comes out, when he comes out, he's resurrected, and he's a god, like the same way, 3 days later, Jesus resurrects, and he's got this divine form, and he's like the new resurrected human. And so that's totally the structure. But what's interesting in this is that Hercules does it by integrating Hades, right? He makes a deal with him, and he just outfoxes him. I don't know. What do you think about that?
Yeah, no, I think the thing that ultimately feels like kind of unsatisfying about this one is that, well, kind of what I said before, it feels like he stays this perpetual kind of adolescent the whole time, if that makes sense. Like, he's not even like Zeus is his father and he's the one in charge. Even Zeus, though, I don't feel like he's the ultimate god in charge. He's kind of goofy. He's kind of like, haha, I'm big, like, gregarious, loud, like,
he's a blowhard,
yeah, it's a blowhard, right? And so
Yeah,
like there's no like Mufasa who is like he is the father, he's serious, he's the one who like is the one you want to aspire to become.
yeah.
And when he descends into the dead and then comes up and does it's I don't feel like he's matured through that. I think that is
Mm,
the process of maturing and going through, but like Hercules still feels like he's very like much a kid throughout.
yeah,
Um
yeah.
and so like I think the story arc is there. The maturity feels lacking to me as my grown up cranky dad self now.
Nice, nice. I like it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's funny because it to me is one of the most satisfying endings
Interesting.
because he sees, fortune and glory,
Yeah.
and then he even sees the open gates of Olympus, and he says, "You know what? Heaven is, on earth with me." That
Yes, but I still feel like he still feels naive to me when he's doing that. Like he doesn't
yeah.
appreciate the gravity of his own situation. He's like, "Well, I love her so much. Like I
Yeah,
couldn't
yeah.
imagine life without her." Like I don't. It still feels to me like the 21-year-old missionary dating guy
But
who
I love
like,
her,
well,
Dad.
I can't leave exactly like I can't leave my girl. Like I'll give up anything to be with her. Like
Yeah,
it's not that I disagree with the decision. I think it's probably
yeah,
like
yeah.
the right thing for the story or whatever, but he still kind of feels like that to me at the end.
Well, how should it have gone?
I don't think it should have gone any different. I just think
Yeah,
I would have loved to see him. He'd be like, all right, I'm a grown up now, and I don't know, maybe it's
yeah,
just
yeah.
my transference with him, but he just feels like such a baby to me the whole time.
Yeah, we'll revisit him in like 6 years when he's got, four kids and he's just exhausted and like,
Should have never gone left Olympus for this. Why am I doing
yeah,
this?
yeah.
Right?
When he gets like a nasty paper cut and he's like,
He's
"What is
yeah.
this?"
He's set up for a total midlife crisis, man. Like,
There you have it. Yeah. If you live like Hercules, set yourself out. He's got like the goes out and blows a bunch of money on a chariot.
yeah. I'm
Well,
I'm
okay, so
trying
what
to be
else?
like Zeus, but I gave it all up for this, and now what am I doing? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Could have been immortal. Could have had that sweet golden glow. Just
What I'm
gives
not
it
I'm
up.
not saying you should have done that because that would have felt shallow too, right? But like
Mm.
a I'm honorably picking up this cross and taking on my mortality in that like
Yeah, yeah,
maybe
yeah.
he's because he's still like a god or a demigod or I don't know like
Right.
that's the part that feels a little still kind of off to me,
Well, I
which
think
feels kind of like I get like you're combining so many different like symbolisms here that like not all the symbology is gonna line up perfectly when you're combining
yeah,
like Greek mythology, the Judeo-Christian story heavily woven in there, and then
yeah.
like
And Superman.
psychological aspects of and
And
Superman, and
yeah.
it's not all going to totally click, but yeah,
It comes from the era of movies that I don't know if we'll ever get to again, where a good, solid romantic love was motivation enough,
yeah. Hmm.
like in and of itself, where that idea is perceived as like almost a given. It's an a priori idea that like, oh yeah, well of course, like romantic love and connecting in that
I'll
way and
sacrifice
mating is
everything for this person. Yes, that's good. That's what you should do,
yeah, like
right?
foregone conclusion. Like that's what uh that's just kind of widely considered as a
When
good
when
thing.
when did that end? When did that end? When did that become unfashionable? Was it Frozen?
Maybe. And
Maybe
so
in
interesting
Disney, but
to
yeah,
revisit Frozen was interesting is we had our discussion about Frozen. We were talking about how like the sort of the self-aware commentary aspect of Frozen
yeah,
is really not all that prevalent when we were watching it. Like as we were talking about, like, is this really a movie that's like intentionally highly critical of past models
right, right, right.
of the princess movie? We were like, kind of not really. Which we had addressed that from the position of people who treated that as a criticism of the movie.
Yeah, I don't
We're
think
like,
Frozen's as cynical as people think it is. Go listen to our Frozen discussion on to hear more on that. But
but interestingly, I was out with some illustrators, and the people who loved Frozen, part of what they loved about it was that they thought it was critical of the
Yeah,
previous models. And
right.
so we were approaching it in terms of like defending it against people who didn't like it for
Yeah,
that idea. And I was encountering people who really loved it for that idea.
right, right.
And I was like, oh, well, I get maybe it is in there more than I thought, or maybe that's what they want to see in it,
Or
and
yeah,
that
or
like
it's a
that's what they're looking
Rorschach
for.
test, and you see what you want to see in there too. I mean, it's there.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
for sure there, but like if you're really like critical of all the old models of like boy meets girl, they fall in love, live happily ever after, then yeah, it's a
80 or
movie that's not
90% of
doing that,
movies.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But I think you'll notice, or I notice, that Disney films are almost devoid of that notion anymore. And it used to be quite primary.
Mm.
And, birth rates are also falling off a cliff. It's like yeah, correlation, causation, who knows? But,
Yeah.
um, like, I can't help but think like there's a version of Moana where Moana and Maui are
They get
there's like a
romantically connected then, yeah.
yeah, there's a romantic relationship there, like because it doesn't negate. And I'm not sure that like Maui is Moana's type, but like
Yeah. I
like
mean
Tangled,
the characters would be written very different if they were doing that because they feel like such buddies throughout that whole thing. But
yeah, but it'd be a slight tweak. Like the adventure would be
yeah,
the
yeah, no,
same.
it's not it. You wouldn't have to rewrite the whole story to add that in.
Yeah, yeah, it would really be some dialogue tweaks, honestly, because they give their lives for one another, and
Yeah.
girl meets boy, girl loses boy, girl gets boy
Hmm.
back, right? Like Maui,
Girl has to
it's
knock boy down from his ego in order to civilize him. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So like all the elements are there, and like so Tangled. If you took Tangled and just made it where they don't, it's really about just restoring her to being a princess and him getting a pardon. Like you could do that story,
Yeah.
and you could make
Yeah.
it so that they aren't
Huh.
in love with each other.
Right.
It isn't
Right.
romancing the stone, which is essentially what Tangled is. Uh,
Okay, circling back to Hercules though, does
yeah,
Meg knock Hercules down from his ego to like civilize him? Is that part of the story? Just kind of
like the
thinking out
sort of
loud.
the civilizing the beast kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
yes, civilizing the beast, or like you know, Maui is super full of himself, and Moana kind of puts him in his place. Not that that's like romantic, but like, or Lion King, Nala has to tell Simba to grow the hell up.
it's the same structure as Wonder Woman, I think, where
Hmm.
you have this naive, self-interested, like
Yeah,
Hercules has got it all going on, and he's in a place of moral judgment over Meg. Like,
yeah.
not only is she sort of like, I don't know, like damaged goods from like being jilted by her
Well,
lover,
but but
and
but does he see her from the place of moral judgment though?
he does when her betrayal is revealed, right?
Oh, okay, yeah,
When
he does then. But
yeah, when
up to
he's like,
that
there's
point, he's
some
kind
things
of like,
worse than death, and like,
yeah, but but
uh,
but up to that point, he's kind of naive. He's like, oh, she's so cool, and she's like, dude, you don't know like my history. He's like, oh, it's great, everything's
yeah,
awesome. Like he's just kind of
but his naivety is his lack of civilization, I think. And so
right. Okay,
she,
yeah,
the same way that Chris Pine's character like opens Wonder Woman's eyes to like, no, there's a lot more nuance and depth to what you are judging as being
yeah.
like you're looking at it black and white. Megara
Mhm.
opens up, like there's a lot of gray area.
Yeah.
And just because maybe I was caught up in bad stuff doesn't mean that I'm not capable of. She actually demonstrates the heroic
Right.
sacrifice for him that
Hmm.
is required to get him into Olympus. And so I think so. I think
Well,
it's a
and so
tweak.
so by that, her like her that's interesting. So rather than like kind of shaming him, putting him in his place, or telling him to grow up in that way, her civilizing him is introducing him to like the shadow side of the world, to the darkness. Like you have to contend with Hades
Yeah,
if you're gonna really be the hero, because otherwise you're just a naive missionary
yeah.
dating 18-year-old.
And there is no real virtue without the potential for failure. There's no virtue. Like there is no courage without fear. There
Yeah.
is no generosity without poverty, or at least charity. There is no charity without, lack and want. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, I think she opens his world in a way that is civilizing, almost in the inverse. But it is the necessary thing in order for him to be remotely suitable as a counterpart.
Well, it's maturing for him. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not. He's got to come out of that naivety.
Yeah.
It's maybe civilizing may not be exactly it, but I think he's got to recognize the nature of evil in the world rather than just this good and bad thing.
The part of the Beauty and the Beast and the civilizing, or the like sort of taking him out of his naivete, is that the beast demonstrates a quality that the beauty has to take on at some point, a certain level of ferocity, like being willing to fight. And so Meg is cynical. She doesn't believe in all that virtue stuff until she sees it. And so when he demonstrates it, she's like, oh, I see that. I can take that on as well and demonstrate that. And so they complement one another and integrate. Villain comeuppance.
Hades.
He kind of gets high on his own supply, right? Like he gets pushed into the river, and so we get the sense like he'll get out of it.
Why does he get pushed into the river? He goes in there to. Oh, he makes the bargain. He makes the bargain with Hercules.
Well,
what happened?
I feel like we might have to tack on a little bit more. Yeah, we have to tack on a little bit more to this.
Hercules makes another bargain. It kind of reverses the thing he and Meg did. All that, right? Last thing, do your kids like this one?
Yeah, my kids love it. They love the music. They ask for the music from.
Is one of my kids' favorite ones. I think the music, and I do think that classic hero's journey Superman thing is kind of a sweet spot for my 6-year-old.
Yeah, and the art is awesome. It's so atypical, and they brought on the art director from Pink Floyd's The Wall and to help with the design, which is why it's like trippy and it's got the curly cues. It's got these like Grecian influences, but it's it's so cool. The monster design is awesome. Yeah, I think let's record an addendum to this, but because I have to like run now to go get it.
Okay,
so
fun stuff. Right. A lot of fun stuff crammed in there at the end. But see you, everyone.
All right, see ya.